President Trump is playing a crucial role. He is the one who broke the deadlock with Putin. He is the one whom we look for leadership.
I want Trump to actually stand up for our allies, like making sure that we do the right thing for Ukraine. With Netanyahu, we've got to bring this Iran war to an end. This war has been a disaster.
We don't always agree about the ways to get to where we want, but we always agree about the direction we are heading. And today was another step forward.
Well, two big one-on-one meetings at the White House today with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House said both of those meetings went well from their point of view, putting out that. But Politico, a tale of two White House visits and a head-scratching turn of events. Netanyahu, not Zelenskyy, is the leader who may have more to prove going into one-on-ones with the U.S. president. The Iran war has dragged on far beyond what the White House had anticipated. Ceasefire processes in Lebanon and Gaza still incomplete. Ukrainian forces emerged from a grueling winter and dealt Russia significant blows in recent months. Those wins apparently landed Zelenskyy in Washington's favor, and those meetings, as we said, characterized as positive. So with that, let's bring in our panel. Fox News senior political analyst Juan Williams, Politico Playbook co-author Dasha Burns, and Josh Holmes, co-host of the Ruthless podcast, former chief of staff to Senator Mitch McConnell. In the other studio tonight, little different look. Josh, what do you make of this? I mean, they're sending out signals that both of these things went pretty well.
Well, first off, what an incredible tribute to Senator Lindsey Graham that both of these world leaders were here for not only the service, but to champion, obviously, two causes that Senator Graham cared very deeply about. When the politics have turned against Israel, when the politics have turned against Ukraine, it was always Senator Lindsey Graham who was the first call from both of those world leaders and the President of the United States to try to bridge the divide. And I think that's where we find ourselves here tonight. I think that characterization may very well be right in terms of Israel and Ukraine, which is very different than it was 6-8 months ago, a year ago, and certainly when this president started his second term. But I also got a kick out of the president reminding the prime minister that he's got an eye on Iran at this point, and there's not much that's happening anywhere that the intelligence that Israel has that we're not privy to. And so I think he's all over both of these things, but these talks are really critically important, maybe more so for Netanyahu.
Yeah, the president mentioned that on the Fox and Friends phone call. I think we have that soundbite. Seemed a little frustrated. Take a listen.
Well, I don't need Bibi to tell me that. Bibi's telling me that because he wants me to stay involved. I heard Bibi announce that. I said, why didn't you just tell it to me? Why do you have to announce it to the world? I know exactly what's going on at Pickaxe. It's not a big problem. We took out their nuclear sites, and we'll have to take out Pickaxe if we don't make a deal.
That's one of the places that they're looking at as far as activity, nuclear activity potentially.
Yeah, look, I just got off the phone with Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary at the White House, just before I got here, and I asked her about that BB meeting because, to Politico's reporting, like, he did have a little bit more at stake here, given the frustration that the president has expressed. She told me that, look, the meeting actually did go fairly well. Bibi did express some skepticism over any sort of deal that could be struck with Iran, but he said to the president, but hey, if you're able to do it, we will support you. There wasn't a huge agenda either from President Trump or from Netanyahu. I think the relationship management is so important with President Trump, even if you're not going in there. In fact, sometimes it's better not to go in there with a specific ask, but just having that FaceTime, both for Netanyahu and for Zelenskyy, is so critically important. And both of those meetings, yeah, it sounds like were actually productive.
This happens, Juan, within the past hour. Iran fired ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in Jordan. Getting word now that at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps forces launched multiple ballistic missiles from Iran in an attempted surprise attack on U.S. forces based in the Middle East. All Iranian missiles were successfully intercepted. U.S. forces remain vigilant at a high state of readiness. They were intercepted these missiles. However, I mean, so much for a ceasefire or any talk like that.
No, I think we have a war, and today marks 5 months, and it is a difficult step if you consider that the firepower seems to have increased and is now destabilizing the region. Now, from the president's perspective, he has wanted all the Arab nations to join in the Abraham Accords, and he's been pushing that, and he's been unable to get them to do so. It may turn out that, in fact, Iran is his biggest ally in getting the other Arab nations to see that Iran is not their friend, and that they should be what's on the side of the United States.
Josh Axios, U.S. officials believe sanctions could hurt Iran more than bombs. The Iranians want to stop being bombed, and they want money, but that's almost in reverse order. They really want the money first. Intelligence is picking up that Iranians are complaining they can't pay their fighters. They're more scared of Treasury than the War Department. You buy that?
It's been tremendously effective over a number of years, the sanctions in general. I mean, economically, we have crippled them on a number of different occasions. Their whole process is try to buy as much time as they can to reconstitute nuclear capabilities and reconstitute their own military capabilities. They're obviously trying to do that again. I think sanctions and pressure is really the way to go here because, as we just found out, they're not going to just come up to some kind of a diplomatic solution because they feel like it. This is not the way that Iran has worked for 47 long years.
President Zelenskyy and Prime Minister Netanyahu will be on Hannity tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I talked to him briefly as he was here in the studio. And Zelenskyy is optimistic about his relationship with President Trump, which, Dasha, as you know, is a complete 180 from where they were. From that Oval Office visit long ago.
It's remarkable. It has completely transformed. The warmth that you feel from President Trump when he speaks to Zelenskyy and about Ukraine now is something that was completely absent even just several months ago. And I do think part of that is he's been able to see through intelligence and through those around him and through Zelenskyy the progress that Ukraine has been able to make, and his frustration with Putin has escalated as well. You know, Ukrainian officials tell me that Zelenskyy in a good mood after his meeting today. You even had, and this blew my mind, Brett, Laura Loomer go to Ukraine and have this sort of road to Damascus experience and a transformation. She was one of the chief online MAGA critics of Ukraine, and she's had a turn. So all of this in aggregate puts Ukraine in a very different position in Trump world right now.
Juan, they are doing an amazing job with drones, with their technology. Ukraine's hitting further into Russia. They're also, though, having a problem with ballistic missile defense. And Zelenskyy sees a tie between Iran and the Middle East trying to protect for Patriot missiles and everything else, and their needs to protect against Russia.
Absolutely. So one of the things that apparently was said in the meeting today was Zelenskyy telling Trump that, in fact, Russia is supporting Iran and helping them with not only firepower but intelligence, apparently China as well. So this is an interesting moment because given the prior antagonism that existed between Trump and Zelenskyy, suddenly I think Trump has reason to see Zelenskyy as a global ally. And not only that, the one European country that's supporting the United States and its war in Iran is the Ukraine, and that's Zelenskyy. I mean, a lot of this is surprising, given a few months ago, if you were sitting here on this panel.
It was also interesting to see at the church service, the memorial, Netanyahu and Zelenskyy talking to each other. It's just an interesting shot.
By the way, Mark Rutte, you played the soundbite earlier from NATO Secretary General. He has been a key player in making and helping Trump understand the role that Ukraine is playing in Europe right now.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.